Hello, fellow zoo crew, and welcome to our matchup guides. Today's matchup guide is going to be presented to you by Tron, green-red Tron, cheating out Emrakul since the beginning of Modern. I think there was a Tron deck. Anyways, moving right along. This is the deck that I'm running against this Tron deck. I played it in the competitive play lobby. And this is your average, current average, I should say, Aquarium Zoo deck, where it's running blue. So it's a little bit of a bigger one. It's got some mana dorks, so it's a little bit different than your small zoo. But you sort of play a little similar. The reason why I've got this one is I've got a good interactive game I want to bring to y'all to see, so you can see the nitty-gritty. But the difference between this matchup and if you had a smaller zoo is a pretty easy, simple matchup to understand. The smaller zoo, you generally want to race. Your goal is to race and not get the board wiped. And if the board was going to get wiped, then you hopefully use something like a Boros Charm in order to stop the board wipe. Racing is going to be your best option against with a small zoo. And actually, you're going to do it a little bit better than the big zoos, or I shouldn't say big zoo, but big zoos generally do it. Being a turn faster than a bigger zoo is a little bit more helpful. But I'm going to go over all the cards, so that way you guys can know for small zoo and big zoo what you should be playing against them. I'm just showing off what I had, so that way you could easily understand. Let's go ahead and go right into my card collection, and just to show you guys what you can do against Tron. If you want to look at these cards, none of these are really that great. Graph Ticker Cage occasionally has some kind of usage if it's like a Tooth and Nail Tron, but you're rarely ever going to run into one of those. Pithing Needle's alright. You can go ahead and pull it and name O-Stone. Pretty much everything else that's on your 1 mana slot is not going to be as good. Chain of the Rocks is alright, but the problem is its main goal, which is to kill a Wormcoil Engine. It does sit there and it gets rid of the Wormcoil Engine. It doesn't leave Wormcoil baby worms left, but it does allow for a Tron for a Karn to come down, or an Ugin to come down, or an O-Stone to come down and wipe it, and then get their worm back. What you do generally have in main deck against these guys are Path to Exiles. Path to Exiles are fantastic in this matchup. They hit only half of the problem, but they hit a good half of the problem, which is they get rid of Wormcoil Engine. There isn't really any other time that you'll use it. Occasionally you'll use it with, like, Nulamog, who is the second version of Ulamog 2.0. But that's few and far in between. You can hit an Emrakul with it, but by the time an Emrakul comes down, either you're going to win the game just because you have more creatures and you can sack all your lands to Emrakul, and throw something in front of it, maybe like a Birds of Paradise, or you're going to just lose the game because it's an Emrakul. Those are your best bet. Early aggression, stuff like Step Links will go a long way into helping you. But if you want to be interactive, you do have some options. You've got Spell Pierce, Stubborn Denial, Swan Song. Stuff like that is alright against them. Swan Song doesn't hit a ton. It stops Pyroclasm, but it does give them a bird token that they can block with, which is not the greatest. Stubborn Denial is going to be very good, as well as Spell Pierce, because that's going to be countering things like Karn, Ugin, O-Stone, stuff like that. The counter-target non-creature spell has become more powerful the more stuff like big planeswalkers that Tron can use are getting casted, and you're luckily able to counter this stuff, even with Spell Pierce and Stubborn, saying only if they pay 1 extra, only if they pay 2 extra, because more or less most of the time they're going to be paying exactly 7 mana or exactly 6 mana. Or for their non-creature spells, it's usually exactly 7 mana. That's going to be Karn, Ugin. Ugin's going to be 8 mana, stuff like that. So you actually are pretty alright to use these guys. Moving right along. You're very rarely going to have any red spells that are that good against them. Like Shattering Spree, stuff that kills artifacts, are generally alright here. And the trick you want to know for artifact kills, things like maps are going to be your main targets for artifact kill. Occasionally, a Relic of Progenitus, killing a Relic of Progenitus will give you better game if you've got like your Knight of the Reliquary chilling in hand or something. But the big thing to know about artifact kill is you want it maybe instant speed if humanly possible. Shattering Spree is alright here, but something else like, I don't know, let's go down. Not Nature's Claim, because Nature's Claim isn't all that great. But let's say Destructive Revelry. Destructive Revelry seems like a good choice here. I'm just scrolling down to it. Destructive Revelry. It's instant speed, destroy target artifact or enchantment. Why instant speed is important here is because, let's say you attack all out and the Tron player is almost dead. They've got 5 damage left, and then they land a, especially for small zoo, this is relevant. And they land a Wormcoil Engine against you. Well, if they didn't have that lifelink, you'd kill them, but the lifelink is going to save their butts. So what you do is you attack all out, and then the Wormcoil is going to choose its blocker, and that's fine. And then instant speed, you destroy it during blocks, so that way it is no longer in combat, it never gained a life, and then your last couple creatures that didn't get blocked killed the opponent. There's also another trick you can do with this respect, which is you are going to go ahead and bolt maybe your Nacatl or something in response to it being blocked by an Emrakul. It's kind of shitty because it means that you can't use that bolt to the face or lightning helix to the face, but it does allow the fact that the Emrakul never dealt damage, therefore never gained life, so you can do it as last ditch effort. That's going to be a huge tip, I think, for all you small zoo players. Another thing you can do is if you have Deflecting Palm, you can Deflecting Palm a Wormcoil Strike, and that will be very good against that because it will in essence stop the Wormcoil life gain, because it's going to prevent that damage, and then Deflecting Palm deals that much damage. The cool thing is you can actually Deflecting Palm also an Emrakul attack. So if you Deflecting Palm an Emrakul attack, then that's sweet, you've got it, you're going to get it. And the cool thing is you can actually do it in response to the Annihilator trigger, because it says the next time it would deal damage this turn. So the next time it would deal damage, which would be this turn, even though it hasn't dealt it yet, you can still do it. Some more cool little things that you can do. Thalia is relevant. I really only board her when I'm on the play, because if she shuts down a map, then they can't turn 3 Tron me, and I have a better chance of winning. So Thalia can be a good one to bring in. I don't know whether it's the correct call all the time. It's mostly I don't know. I sort of make that call when I'm in the moment, deciding whether or not I think they're going to play fast or play conservatively. And if they're playing more conservatively, then Thalia ends up being very, very good. Thalia, however, though, if you're playing against a blue Tron, which this one isn't, is very good. So I'm just putting a point blank out there. Stony Silence at any point in time, though, is good against Tron. It shuts down their O-Stone. That used to be the only way they can kill us. Now they can kill us with an Ugin still. But it shuts down their O-Stone, shuts down their maps, shuts down their relics, shuts down their chromatic spheres for them to cycle through things. It's got a lot of cool little tricks there. It's also better against the blue Tron deck, but it does have a lot of use. And if you can get it down as early as turn 2, especially if you're on the play, you could actually successfully shut down a Tron player right away. And the good thing is it's generally there because of affinity anyway, so you probably have at least one in your sideboard. Unified Will is a good one because you'll always have more creatures than they would do, and that means you can also kill off their Wormcoil Engines as well as their Trons, their Karns and their Ugins and things. So if you have Unified Will, that's really good. I'd also side in Negate if you have the Negate. Negate is good here as well because it stops Tron. I'm sorry, it stops Ugin, Karn, O-Stone. All is Dust they sometimes bring in from the sideboard if they have it, as well as Pyroclasm. So you've just got a lot of play that you can do with just hanging on to a Negate. Gives you a lot more outs if you're running the blue. If you're not running blue and you're running more of like just a quick attack, you also have things like Eidolon the Great Revel. Eidolon the Great Revel is good against any deck that dirtles for a little bit, and it just because the Tron deck might turn 3 Karn you, does not mean they don't dirtle. They spend most of their times turn 1, turn 2, turn 3, turn 4 even, finding Tron pieces and putting it into place. So Eidolon the Great Revel can generally hit for upwards to 6 damage, and that's usually enough to end the game with your other aggression. Also worth noting is things like Skullcrack. Skullcrack will stop life gain, and that stops a turn of Wormcoil. If you're running the faster zoo, you would want to have Skullcrack or Atarka's Command into your main deck, so that way you can stop the maybe a turn of Wormcoil. You can usually, like I said, attack all out and then just stop the Wormcoil damage as well as do 3 damage to the opponent. That usually is enough to close out the game with the last bit of Alpha Strike. Some worth noting, just some weaker cards that you probably have in your main deck or sideboard. Tarmogoyf isn't that great against Jund. You can side him out. Scavenging Ooze is not that great against Tron, excuse me. And so those cards are worth siding out. Voice of Resurgence are worth siding out. Stuff that's sort of gives you utility against the more bluish decks, or mid-ranger decks, or decks that want to grind you, you can side out because they're not going to be super great in this matchup. Bolts also I'd side out. Actually, that's the first thing I'd side out, is all 4 of my bolts. I know it sounds crazy because everyone loves bolts, but it's true. You do want to keep in Qasali Pridemage for that off chance that you can hit a map and slow them down for a full turn. That usually gives you the win, as well as the being able to hit instant speed a Wormcoil. And that'll definitely help you win the game here. Something that you might want to consider, and is stupidly good against Tron, here we're getting to the powerful things. Of course, the more higher up in mana you go, the better chance you have at destroying them. You have Aven Mind Sensor. Aven Mind Sensor is great against Tron, especially if you're on the play and you can land it in response to like a map trigger or something. Oh, you're very strong to win the game at that point. Another thing that can help you win the game is Blood Moon effects. Blood Moon effects are some of the greatest things that you can do. It's not a guaranteed win, mind you. Actually, Aven Mind Sensor, if it sticks and it does what it needs to do, it could be better to run Aven Mind Sensor. Aven Mind Sensor, I think, is actually a harsher hate than Blood Moon against the Tron decks, because the Tron decks can still Pyroclasm you out, which is why Magus Moon is not always an instant kill if you're using this with Collected Company. But it does delay them enough turns, and if it delays them long enough, if you've got a fast enough clock, you can win. But if you don't have the fast enough clock to back it up, they can still start casting their stuff once they hit 6 or 5 mana lands. They also can still cast an O-Stone and blow it up. Not in the same turn usually, but can blow it up and then still have access to all their lands. So definitely worth noting is the Aven Mind Sensor, the Blood Moon, and the Magnus of the Moon. Those are your biggest ways of killing. If you're running Root Coral Helm combo, leave it in, because you can just instant speed win sometimes while they're not prepared. It is maybe a full turn faster than their lock win, but also it can tap down Wormcoils. I've had times where I've casted this and I've sandbagged a fetch land so that way I could attack a couple more times and get through. Generally, that's going to be it. Even Choke isn't really that good against the blue Tron decks that you might occasionally run. The Reclamation Sage is alright against them, but it's you start getting into pretty slower terms. Molten Rain isn't an instant game win if you get it, but it is very good. You have to cast it on turn 3. There is no exceptions. By the time turn 4 rolls around, it will probably be too late for you to win at that point. But it's definitely worth mentioning that it's there and it's usable. Higher up on the mana curve, you're not really going to have a chance to win. You can have things like Worship, but you got to realize there's so many Vindicate spells that they have between Ugin and Karn and O-Stone that it's probably not going to work out in your favor. Other than that, you could always have some stuff like discard Mardu Charm and whatnot. Thoughtseize will help you out to set yourself up to maybe buy an extra turn, but it's not, again, guaranteed. Your best outs really are Blood Moon and Aven Mind Sensor, and maybe a Stony Silence early on. And fast aggression. You want to make sure that you have the fast aggression. Gorklan Rampager helps out here. Things like Elspeth can be top end that really helps you out. I found a lot of times that I'll win against Tron, even when I'm playing the slower, bigger zoo deck like this, by instant speed collecting companying at end of turn, and then swinging for lethal with my final couple creatures. So again, aggression goes a long way to help you out with this matchup. It's definitely going to be a race no matter what, even when you have interactivity. Let's go ahead and just skip right to a game here, so that way you can see what ends up happening. Let's just go ahead and play this very fast. So he's going to start out with the turn 1 map, which is like, ugh, we're always starting out with the turn 1 map for Tron. That means they're going to get their get their turn 3 Tron piece up, and not to mention being on the play kind of stinks as well. We're gonna go ahead and put down our Noble Hierarch, just because we got to ramp into Knight of the Reliquary. Maybe we can do a Qasali Pridemage. If he dirtles around, he leaves that Expedition map open, I'm gonna kill the Expedition map right away. So I'm just gonna go ahead, and not only that, we don't have land, so we got to start with a Noble Hierarch. We did luck drawing the land here, which meant that we weren't like completely dead. And we're going to cast the Knight of the Reliquary. The reason why I cast the Knight of the Reliquary, that's a 3/3 over the 4/4 here, is because I'm looking at this. He's got his Tron up, especially with the Expedition map. Really, one of the only good ways out I have is to hopefully draw the combo next turn and then go off with the Retreat to Coral Hill combo with the Knight. Not to mention, if I do draw a fetch land, it's still just as good. And 1 damage less that I'm attacking is probably not going to call the game out. But for what it's worth, I still am a little okay, because if he goes with an O-Stone and he doesn't have the 8th mana to blow everything up right away, I can still Qasali Pridemage it away. And I still have a Path to Exile for a Worm Coil if he goes with the Worm Coil. So we'll see what happens here. He ends up going with the Worm Coil, and then I say, alright, well, at least I got a Path to Exile, so we gotta go for the Path to Exile here. So I've got the Path to Exile. The question is, what do I want to cast here? Do I want to cast a Pridemage, or do I want to cast a Tarmogoyf? I decide that I want to cast a Tarmogoyf, and my reasoning is because it's going to put more pressure on the field. I'm going to be attacking for at least 1 more damage by putting the Tarmogoyf on the field than I am with the Qasali Pridemage. I can still blow up an artifact if I need to, but there's no extra mana here. If I had an extra mana here, I probably would end up going with the Qasali Pridemage, so that way I can blow something up on his turn. But that ended up not happening. So he's got lots of stuff, and he ends up all is dusting me. I go, that kind of sucks, you know. But I did draw a land on my turn. Great, that means the Knight of the Reliquary is going to be big. And that's exactly what we're going to go for. We're going to go for the Knight of the Reliquary here. It's 4 damage that potentially wins the game if I have the combo. Cool, we drew another land. What that means is I can maximize my damage output. He has not drawn into another piece. A lot of the times, the Tron deck is all gasoline and no fire, if that makes any sense. They have their one big thing that they're going to do, in which case this guy's was going to be a Worm Coil engine. Or they're going to find things with Eye of Ugin. That's one of the ways they get around it. But they might have all enablers, aka lands and Tron pieces, but nothing else. So we're just going to go ahead and put ourselves out there. We're going to maximize our damage output. In this case, it's going to be a Luxodon Smiter and then bolting. That way we do the most damage that we possibly can. If he ends up going for the Worm Coil with the Eye of Ugin, then we're actually pretty alright here. We can kill at instant speed with the Qasali Pridemage and still get at least almost lethal. He'll be at 1 life. But instead he ends up going for a Ulamog. Not the new one, Ulamog 1.0, which is indestructible, and when you cast it you can destroy target permanent. Okay, so that's fine. We're still going to be able to bolt him in response and bring him down to that thing. There you finding a one damage being like, oh, if I only had that 1 extra damage, I could have actually possibly won this game right here and now, but I didn't, and I still think it was the correct choice here, even though I did luck out a little bit, I'll admit. And part of winning against these guys is lucking a little bit, because this is a pretty bad matchup if you're a bigger zoo. He's going to get rid of here, and actually this would, in fact, win him the game here, if he gets rid of my my Knight of the Reliquary, and then I can't attack through. So he's actually pretty good right now, but luckily, like I said, we have the Collected Company here, so we can collect the company at end of turn and win as long as we hit 1 creature that has a power of 1. Or if we, yeah, that's the only option. If we ended up drawing a Bird of Paradise or something, we could still win if we drew a Keswick Wolf Run. Or we could actually win just by casting the Qasali Pride Mage and attacking with only the bird. If it was a Noble Hierarch, then we'd have to draw the Wolf Run in order to win the game here. So let's go ahead and roll the dice, see what happens. We should feel pretty good though, because our deck has a ton of stuff. And well, look at that, we got 2 creatures that we can do. This is going to be game. So we just untap, swing, and win. Simple as that. Alright, so that's game 1 down. Pretty quick, pretty easy. So that's game 1 down, and as I showed you, it was just through pure aggression. Just pure aggression and a little bit of luck, as well as a teeny bit of interactivity coming from the Path to Exile. We managed to pull that game together sort of at the last second. That's just always kind of how it is against Tron. But this one, as always, like I like to show when I play something different, this one's going to be full of interactivity. So we're going to go ahead and keep this hand. The reason why I keep this hand is because I see a Thalia. If he's a little slow, which we already saw with his turn 1 Chromatic Sphere, that means he's going to be a turn delayed with getting a map into play, then yeah, we're going to put down the Thalia. Thalia is going to be able to be pretty good here in that response. Likewise, I have a Negate, and that's going to be great if he tries to put down an Ugin, which destroys Zoo. If you see an Ugin and it does its negative, if the opponent is not at 3 life, there's a very good chance that you are about to die. And we also have an Aven Mind Sensor. So this hand is stocked. It would be better if we had like a turn 1 Noble Hierarch or a turn 1 3/3 Kitty. But, you know, beggars can't be choosers, so I'm going to be fine with this. He's going to go ahead and an Ancient Stirrings. He's going to find all his dust with that Ancient Stirring. So we're like, alright, so eventually he's going to win the game with all his dusting. He's got 2 pieces, though, and that kind of stinks. But we're lucky here, and the reason why we're lucky here is because Thalia comes down, and Thalia is going to go ahead and say that even if you have the natural Tron, that guy costs 7 mana, he's going to cost 8 mana with the Thalia tax, and you can't play that right away, even just because the most that you can do with a full natural Tron is 7. So we've got at least 1 turn to buy us some time to get to negate, and then we can negate it and we can still attack down. But luckily all of our stuff's going to be instant speed, and we actually are very interactive here. So he ends up going to the map here, and I go, oh my god, I'm going to get it. This is it. I would love to cast the Noble Hierarch and then just sit down on a negate, but no, we've got the Aven Mind Sensor. We're absolutely going to go for the Aven Mind Sensor here. So he's going to go for it right away on his turn. That's fine. If he didn't do it on his turn, I still would have left the mana open up and waited. And we're going to bring in that Aven Mind Sensor right away. One of the reasons why we did it in this way and we did wait for him, even though you could have argued to have done it my main phase, so that way he couldn't have done it later down the line, was since I already saw him put down the second power plant, I already knew he was actually pretty stocked, and he needed to get the map triggered in order to finish off his Tron, and that's what he needed to rush to in order to get to his all his dust. That's his best plan of action. He's not counting on an Aven Mind Sensor, and even if he was, it was a 2, 3 of, maybe tops 3 of in my deck, so 3 out of 60 cards. That's not a very high probability, and I also wanted to make sure that he put his mana into the Expedition map, so that way he wouldn't have an easy way to Pyroclasm. Pyroclasm would wreck me here, but if he went ahead and put 2 mana into the map, even if he dropped the red source right here, he'd have only 2 mana, and with the Thalia task, it would give me at least 1 more turn of out, and then I'd have the backup negate. So let's go. So cool, we're gonna go right in there. And boop, there's the Aven Mind Sensor. So Aven Mind Sensor comes down. He ends up getting a land off of the map, but he gets a Ghost Quarter. That's not super great. We end up drawing a land, which is actually pretty good for us. That means we can keep 3 mana open for negate. Remember, we get taxed by our Thalia as well. But we can at least cast this Noble Hierarch, and if we at least cast this Noble Hierarch, then that means that we will have 5 mana open to us, which means that we can play the Tarmogoyf and still have negate open. So we're still being very interactive here, and we're okay with being a little bit of a tempo deck in this response. So his hand's probably full of like search pieces and nothing to do with it, or it's got a worm coil engine or a Karn or something, but he can't cast it yet, so that's not super great for him. So he's gonna try to slowly build up his mana. All right, that's fine. We're gonna keep just picking away here, and we're gonna do just like I said. We're gonna put down that Tarmogoyf. All right, so he doesn't have it yet, but he does have 6 mana. He can play that worm coil. So we're gonna go ahead and pay the 2 for the Path to Exile. 2 is perfectly fine here, and we're going to keep attacking. We're doing really good here. We got him down to 2. At this point, he could, he would have to all his dust to me, at this point, and he would need to float a mana. And with that, if he floated all the mana, he ended up not doing it, he messed up. But if he ended up floating a mana and he all his dust to me to try to stall out this game and then eventually win the game, we could have negated it. If he were to play a, if you were to have played a Karn, again, negate. If you were to play an Ugin, again, negate. If you were to play a O-Stone, again, negate. If you were to play a Worm Coil, which we can't path at this point because we already used up our path, it's fine. We have Aven Mind Sensor, and with a Noble Hierarch trigger, it would have been 3 damage, which is more than enough to kill him at this point. So that was a very interactive game. I know I ran through these very quick, but I'm trying to keep my videos under 30 minutes long. I hope you guys enjoyed the matchup guide. If you have any questions or want to comment on the matchup, maybe tell me if I'm playing anything wrong. Let me know. I'll be glad to comment back on the YouTube videos. Again, if you guys want to talk more zoo talk and talk to me in a longer sort of fashion than just on YouTube comments, you can always go to MTG Salvation's Modern Subforum and Zoo thread that I run there. That's what this guide is about to go up on. So I hope you guys enjoyed it, and like, comment, subscribe if you guys want to see more zoo videos, and remember, as always, to feed your animals.